My name is Celine Bianchi. I am 23 years old, and for as long as I can remember, people have called the Bianchi estate my home. From the outside, it looked like the perfect family mansion. It stood on a quiet hill overlooking the city, surrounded by manicured gardens, elegant fountains, and walls covered with climbing roses. Visitors admired its beauty without ever realizing that, inside those walls, I had never been treated like family. I grew up believing I was simply less important than everyone else. While other children were encouraged to study, travel, and dream about their future, I learned how to scrub marble floors until they reflected the ceiling lights, how to prepare formal dinners for dozens of guests, and how to remain silent whenever someone blamed me for problems I did not create. I never questioned it because I thought every family had someone like me. As time passed, nothing changed except my responsibilities. Every year brought more work and fewer answers. I became the person everyone depended on but no one appreciated. If breakfast was late, it was my fault. If a guest complained, it was my fault. If flowers wilted in the garden, somehow that became my fault too. The only person who seemed to enjoy watching me live that way was Isabella Bianchi. Isabella was elegant, confident, and admired wherever she went. She dressed perfectly, spoke politely in public, and always knew exactly what people wanted to hear. Most guests believed she was generous and compassionate. They never saw the person I saw every day behind closed doors. She never shouted unless nobody important was listening. She rarely insulted me directly because she preferred something far more effective. She made everyone else believe I deserved whatever happened to me. For years I convinced myself that enduring everything quietly was the price of belonging somewhere. I was wrong. 3 weeks before Isabella's wedding, the mansion transformed into the busiest place I had ever seen. Designers arrived from Milan carrying expensive fabrics. Florists delivered thousands of fresh flowers every morning. Caterers, musicians, photographers, and event planners filled every hallway from sunrise until late at night. Everyone had an important role. Mine was making sure none of them noticed I existed. Every morning I woke before dawn. I prepared breakfast for relatives who barely remembered my name. After that I cleaned guest bedrooms, unpacked deliveries, polished antique silverware, arranged seating charts, and handled every emergency the wedding planners couldn't solve. Long after midnight, while music echoed through the ballroom upstairs, I was still washing dishes alone in the kitchen. Nobody ever asked whether I was tired. Nobody thanked me. One afternoon Isabella entered the kitchen during a fitting for her custom wedding dress. The room immediately fell silent as everyone admired her reflection. She looked at me and smiled. That smile never meant kindness. "Celine," she said calmly, "during the ceremony, stay out of sight. The photographers are creating a luxury wedding album. Your uniform doesn't fit the atmosphere." Several relatives laughed. One of them added, "Guests might mistake you for family if you stand too close." More laughter followed. I lowered my eyes and continued slicing vegetables as though I hadn't heard anything. Experience had taught me that defending myself only created new reasons for punishment. Later that evening, while carrying clean table linens through the east hallway, I heard Isabella speaking on the phone inside her private office. The door wasn't completely closed. Her voice sounded different. Cold. Confident. "After tomorrow's meeting," she whispered, "everything will be secure. Once I marry into the Moretti family, those documents disappear forever." I stopped walking. Documents. She continued speaking too quietly for me to hear clearly, but one sentence reached me before footsteps echoed behind me. "No one can ever connect her to any of it." Her. Before I could listen longer, another house employee rounded the corner, forcing me to continue walking as though nothing had happened. That conversation stayed in my mind all night. The following morning brought another unexpected moment. Victor Moretti, the father of Isabella's fiancé, arrived at the mansion earlier than anyone expected to inspect the wedding preparations personally. Staff members rushed through every room making last-minute adjustments while guests gathered in the entrance hall. I balanced a large arrangement of white lilies in my arms and carefully crossed the marble foyer. As I passed him, Victor suddenly stopped walking. He stared directly at me. Not at the flowers. Not at my uniform. At my face. His expression shifted from polite curiosity to unmistakable shock. The conversation around us faded into silence as he took one slow step closer. Then he quietly asked a question that made my heart stop. "Young lady." His eyes never left mine. "Where did you get the scar behind your left ear?" The flowers nearly slipped from my hands. I had never met Victor Moretti before. Almost nobody even knew that scar existed. So how could a complete stranger recognize it the moment he saw my face? For several long seconds, neither of us spoke. Victor Moretti continued looking at me as though he had seen someone he never expected to meet again. His expression wasn't ordinary curiosity. It was the kind of shock that comes from recognizing something impossible. I instinctively touched the area behind my left ear. "The scar?" I asked quietly. He gave a slow nod. Before he could say another word, Isabella appeared beside us with perfect timing. She slipped one arm through Victor's as if she had simply come to welcome him, but I noticed the brief look she shot toward me. It lasted less than a second. Fear. Real fear. Then it disappeared behind another polished smile. "Oh, there you are, Mr. Moretti," Isabella said warmly. "I hope Celine wasn't bothering you." Victor frowned. "No." Isabella laughed softly. "She's been with our household for years. Sometimes she gets curious around important guests." I lowered my eyes without answering. Normally I would have walked away immediately, but Victor surprised me. I was the one asking questions. The smile on Isabella's face became slightly tighter. "I see." She looked at me. "Celine, the florist, needs help in the West Garden." Her voice sounded calm. Her eyes gave an order. "Leave." I nodded and carried the flowers outside. As I walked away, I could feel Victor watching me. The West Garden overlooked a small lake behind the mansion. Workers were arranging white roses beneath a large glass pavilion where the wedding reception would take place after the ceremony. I spent nearly 2 hours helping decorate tables. Every few minutes I caught myself thinking about Victor's question. Why would a stranger care about a scar? The scar itself wasn't remarkable. It curved behind my left ear, hidden beneath my hair. According to the story I'd heard my entire life, I had fallen down the basement stairs when I was 4 years old. That explanation had always seemed believable. Until today. Around lunchtime I returned to the main house to collect more candles from the storage room. As I reached for the boxes, I heard someone behind me. "Celine." I turned around. Victor stood alone in the doorway. No assistants. No family members. No Isabella. He gently closed the door. "I hope I'm not frightening you," he said. "You aren't. I only need to ask you something." I nodded. "Were you born in this city?" "I honestly don't know." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "You don't know?" "My parents never talked about it." He remained silent for a moment before asking another question. "Have you ever seen your birth certificate?" I shook my head. "No." "What about childhood photographs before the age of 5? Again. "No." He slowly exhaled. I thought so. A strange feeling settled inside my chest. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering immediately, Victor removed an old leather wallet from his jacket. Carefully, he unfolded a faded photograph protected inside a transparent sleeve. It had clearly been carried for years. This picture was taken 23 years ago. He handed it to me. I looked down. It showed a hospital nursery. Rows of newborn babies rested inside clear bassinets. Several nurses stood nearby smiling toward the camera. Nothing seemed unusual. Then Victor pointed toward one infant. "Look closely." The baby wore a tiny silver identification bracelet around one ankle. My breathing slowed. The bracelet looked familiar. Too familiar. Without thinking, I rolled up the hem of my pants. Around my left ankle was an old silver bracelet I had worn for as long as I could remember. It had never been removed. The engraved pattern matched the bracelet in the photograph almost perfectly. I stared back at Victor. My family always said it was just something I wore as a baby. Victor's face grew serious. My late wife worked as a volunteer researcher at that hospital. I listened carefully. Several years before she died, she became interested in irregular hospital records involving newborn registrations. A chill ran through my body. She believed something had happened there. What kind of something? I don't know. His answer surprised me. She died before she could finish investigating. He paused. But before she passed away, she told me one thing. He looked directly into my eyes. If I ever met a young woman with that bracelet and that scar. His voice became almost a whisper. I should ask her questions. Every sound outside the storage room seemed to disappear. None of this made sense. How could his late wife know about me decades before we met? Why would my scar matter? Before I could ask another question, the storage room door flew open. Isabella stood there. Her breathing was uneven, almost as if she had been searching every room in the mansion. There you are, she said, forcing another smile. She looked first at Victor, then at me. What an unexpected conversation. Victor remained completely calm. I asked Celine to stay. For the briefest moment, Isabella's mask cracked. I saw panic. Not annoyance. Not jealousy. Panic. She recovered almost immediately. The rehearsal is about to begin, she said. Everyone's waiting. Victor gave a polite nod. I'll be there shortly. Isabella didn't move. Instead, she looked directly at me. Celine. Her tone was softer than usual. Almost gentle. I'll need you upstairs after this. That frightened me more than if she had shouted. Because Isabella only became gentle when she was planning something. As they both left the room, Victor glanced back one last time. His expression carried a silent warning. Whatever he suspected, it was much bigger than either of us had admitted. And somewhere inside the mansion, Isabella was already making her next move. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the faded hospital photograph, the tiny silver bracelet around the baby's ankle, and the look on Victor Moretti's face when he realized I was wearing the same one. Nothing added up. If my parents had told me the truth my entire life, then why had they never shown me a birth certificate? Why did we have almost no photographs from my childhood? And why would a man I had only met that morning know more about my past than I did? By sunrise, the mansion had returned to its usual chaos. Delivery trucks filled the front driveway. Wedding planners hurried from room to room with clipboards in their hands. Guests continued arriving from different parts of Italy, filling every bedroom and guest suite. I forced myself to focus on work. It was the only thing I knew how to do. Around noon, one of the security guards approached me while I was arranging centerpieces in the ballroom. Mr. Moretti would like to see you. I hesitated. Now. He nodded. His car is waiting outside. For a brief moment, I wondered if I should refuse. If Isabella found out, she would certainly make my life even harder. But something inside me kept repeating the same thought. You deserve answers. 20 minutes later, Victor's driver parked outside a modern office building in the financial district. The building looked nothing like the elegant hotels or luxury businesses connected to the wedding. Its entrance displayed only a simple brass sign. Sinclair Investigations. Victor led me upstairs into a conference room where a woman in her early 40s stood beside a large table covered with folders. She extended her hand. My name is Nora Sinclair. I shook it. She smiled politely, but her eyes remained focused. I've been investigating financial crimes for almost 15 years. I looked at Victor. I don't understand. You will, he answered. Nora opened one of the folders. Instead of legal contracts, it contained newspaper articles. Dozens of them. Each headline mentioned the same organization. The Bianchi Family Foundation. I frowned. Our family's charity. So that's what you've been told. She slid another document across the table. It was a financial report listing scholarships supposedly awarded to hundreds of orphan children over more than 2 decades. At first glance, everything looked legitimate. Until Nora pointed toward one particular column. Read the beneficiary names. I scanned the page. My heart skipped. Celine Bianchi. Again. And again. And again. The same name appeared on multiple pages covering different years. That wasn't possible. I've never received any scholarship. I know. She placed another stack beside the first. This continues for hundreds of records. I looked at Victor in disbelief. What does this mean? Nora answered calmly. It means someone has been using your identity for years. I stared at her. My identity? She nodded. The foundation accepted enormous charitable donations from international sponsors. According to official reports, those funds paid for housing, education, medical care, and scholarships for children. She paused. The children never existed. The room suddenly felt colder. The names were fabricated. I looked down again. My own name appeared everywhere. Some records listed me as an orphan in Florence. Others claimed I attended schools I had never heard of. One file even stated I had graduated from a university despite the fact that I had never stepped inside one. I felt sick. But why use my name? Nora opened another folder. Because your legal records are incomplete. She pointed towards several government documents. There are missing registration files during your first years of life. Victor continued the explanation. Someone discovered that long ago. And they realized your identity could be manipulated without raising immediate suspicion. I struggled to process everything. So, my life. Nora finished the sentence for me. Keeping you isolated protected the fraud. She leaned forward. If you had attended university, you would have needed identity verification. If you had opened business accounts, the inconsistencies would have appeared. If you had applied for international travel, government agencies might have discovered duplicate records. The realization hit me all at once. That was why I had never been encouraged to study. Why every opportunity outside the mansion had quietly disappeared. Why every dream somehow ended before it even began. It wasn't because I was unwanted. It was because someone needed me invisible. Victor reached into another folder. I want to show you something else. He placed an old photograph on the table. This one was different. It showed a fundraising gala held nearly 20 years earlier. A giant banner behind the stage displayed the Bianchi Family Foundation logo. Standing near the podium was a much younger Isabella. She couldn't have been older than 18. Beside her stood several executives and accountants. One of them held a folder labeled Beneficiary Registry. Nora pointed toward the folder. We recovered internal emails discussing changes made shortly after this event. She slid printed emails toward me. Most were heavily coded. But one sentence stood out. Keep the original girl away from public records until the transfers are complete. Original girl. I looked at Victor. Do they mean me? He nodded slowly. We believe so. Another page followed. This time it contained copies of international wire transfers totaling millions of dollars. Every transaction had been approved years after Isabella officially assumed management of the foundation. The image everyone admired. The perfect daughter. The generous philanthropist. The successful businesswoman. None of it was real. She hadn't built a charitable empire. She had hidden behind one. Everything suddenly made sense. The endless control. The isolation. The constant reminders that I wasn't important. She didn't hate me because of who I was. She feared what I represented. I was living evidence that her carefully constructed system had been built on a stolen identity. Victor slowly closed the folders. My wife suspected this before she died. He looked down for a moment. She never found enough proof. Nora met my eyes. But now we have something she never had. What? You? Before I could answer, Nora's phone vibrated. She checked the screen. Her expression changed immediately. We have a problem. Victor stood. What happened? Nora turned the phone toward him. The mansion security system just recorded someone entering your temporary office inside the estate. I frowned. So, no one should be there. She enlarged the image. The security camera showed a woman quietly unlocking the office door. Even from the grainy footage, I recognized her instantly. Isabella. She wasn't searching for wedding paperwork. She was looking for something else. And judging by the urgency on her face, she already knew someone had started uncovering the truth. We returned to the mansion faster than I expected. Victor's car didn't slow down once through the city streets. Nora sat in the passenger seat reviewing security footage on her tablet, while I kept staring out the window, trying to understand how everything had shifted so quickly. Just yesterday, my biggest concern was finishing wedding preparations without being yelled at. Now I was sitting next to a man who believed my entire life had been used as part of a financial crime. And somewhere inside that mansion, Isabella was already moving. When we arrived, the atmosphere outside looked completely normal. Guests laughed in the garden. Waiters carried trays of champagne. The orchestra practiced softly near the reception pavilion. Nothing looked wrong. But Nora didn't relax. They're good at hiding chaos, she said quietly. Especially during events like this. Victor stepped out first. Celine stays close to me, he said. I didn't argue. For once, I didn't want to be alone. Inside the mansion, Isabella was hosting a private bridal meeting in the West Wing. Staff members moved in and out carrying documents, jewelry cases, and floral samples. Everything looked carefully controlled. Too controlled. Then it happened. A security officer entered the main hall with a serious expression. Something has been reported missing, he announced. Conversation stopped immediately. Isabella appeared at the top of the staircase within seconds. What's missing? She asked calmly. A small velvet box. A diamond necklace prepared for the wedding photo session. The officer turned toward me. We were informed it was last seen near the staff quarters. Every head in the room slowly turned in my direction. I felt it instantly. This wasn't confusion. This was setup. Isabella descended the stairs slowly, her expression full of concern. Celine, she said softly, did you take it by accident? The word accident wasn't an accusation. It was a suggestion. Before I could respond, another staff member stepped forward. I saw her near the bridal suite earlier. That was enough. Murmurs spread across the room. Victor took a step forward, but Isabella raised her hand gently. Let's not create panic during such an important event, she said. We can resolve this quietly. Her kindness was practiced. Strategic. Controlled. Within 10 minutes, security searched my assigned quarters. Drawers were opened. My belongings were scattered across the floor. And then, the necklace was found inside my suitcase. A perfect placement. A perfect trap. Gasps filled the hallway. One of the guests whispered. I knew something wasn't right about her. I stood still. Because I already understood what was happening. This wasn't about a necklace. It was about discrediting me before I could speak. Isabella stepped forward with a disappointed expression. I always believed you were simply confused, Celine, she said. But this. She shook her head gently. This is disappointing. Victor looked at me. Not with doubt. But with calculation. He didn't speak yet. He was waiting. Then Nora arrived. She walked directly past everyone and placed a small device on the table. "I'd like to pause this accusation," she said. A security officer frowned. "You can't interfere with." "I can," Nora interrupted. "Because this building has been under temporary legal observation since this morning." Silence spread. She pressed a button. A video appeared on the nearby monitor. The hallway outside my room. Clear footage. Time-stamped. The footage showed Isabella's personal assistant entering my quarters while I was in the ballroom helping staff. He stayed inside for exactly 3 minutes. Then he left carrying something. Isabella didn't move. Her face remained calm, but her fingers tightened slightly at her side. Nora zoomed in. "Let's enhance audio." The recording played. Isabella's voice. Not from the hallway. From a private call she made earlier that morning. "If anything threatens the wedding documents," she said clearly in the recording, "make sure it is handled before tomorrow." The room went silent. One of the guests turned toward Isabella. "What documents?" someone asked. No answer. Then Nora placed a second file on the table. Bank transfers. International accounts. Shell companies. Names linked directly to the Bianchi Family Foundation. Victor finally spoke. "This is what you were trying to hide," he said. Isabella turned slowly toward him. For the first time, her smile disappeared completely. "I was protecting this family," she said. Victor didn't blink. "No," he replied. "You were protecting yourself." The silence after that sentence felt heavier than anything I had ever experienced in that house. Isabella looked at me. Not angry. Not emotional. Something colder. Like acceptance mixed with calculation. "You don't understand what you are involved in," she said quietly. Nora stepped forward. "Actually," she replied, "we understand it very clearly." She gestured toward me. "Your entire financial structure depends on a person who has been kept legally invisible for over 2 decades. Isabella didn't respond. That silence confirmed everything. The truth wasn't something she could deny anymore. But it also wasn't something she intended to surrender easily. Because as the room prepared to arrest her assistant and secure the evidence, Isabella slowly reached for her phone. And in that moment, I realized something important. She wasn't finished. Not even close. After the chaos in the mansion, I was taken to a quieter part of the estate. The garden wing. It was the only place that still felt untouched by the investigation, though even there, I could feel everything shifting underneath the surface. Victor stayed with me. Nora was making calls, coordinating with authorities and securing the financial documents they had just exposed. Security staff moved in and out of the main building like everything was falling apart in slow motion. But my mind wasn't on Isabella anymore. It was on my parents. Because something still didn't make sense. If Isabella had built this entire system around hiding my identity, then my parents had to know something. They were the ones who raised me. They were the ones who kept me inside that house for 23 years. I finally asked the question I had been avoiding. Where are my parents? Victor didn't answer immediately. He looked uncomfortable for the first time since I met him. They are here, he said. A few minutes later, I was brought into a private rehabilitation center connected to the estate. The room was quiet. Too quiet. And there she was. My mother. She was sitting near a window, her hands resting gently on her lap. Medical equipment surrounded her, but she looked calmer than I remembered her being in years. When she saw me, her eyes changed instantly. Not surprise. Relief. I stepped closer slowly. Mom. Her lips trembled. She tried to speak, but only a faint sound came out at first. Victor stood behind me and spoke softly. She suffered a stroke 3 years ago. She's been recovering since then. I didn't know what to feel. Anger. Confusion. Something heavier than both. My mother reached for my hand. Her grip was weak, but intentional. Then she pulled something from under her blanket. A small notebook. Worn out. She placed it in my hands. I opened it. The first page contained handwriting I recognized immediately. My mother's handwriting. But the words were not what I expected. I never wanted you to live like this. I froze. I turned the page. I tried to send you away. I tried to get you into schools outside the estate. Every request was blocked. My chest tightened. Another page. I discovered the foundation was being used for illegal transfers. When I threatened to report it, everything changed. My fingers shook as I kept reading. I became sick shortly after that. They said it was a stroke, but I always believed something was done to silence me. I looked up at her. Her eyes were filled with tears. She was trying to speak again. This time, slowly, broken words came out. Celine. I tried. Her voice cracked. I tried to protect you. I felt something collapse inside me. All those years I thought she ignored me. That she accepted everything. That she allowed me to become invisible inside my own home. But she hadn't. She had been fighting in silence. The notebook continued. Each page revealed attempts she made to change things. Letters to schools. Requests for legal identity clarification. Warnings about Isabella's financial control. Every single attempt had been blocked or erased. Victor stepped closer. We found some of those documents during the investigation, he said. She was closer to exposing the foundation than anyone realized. I sat down slowly beside her. My hands were still holding the notebook. I didn't know, I whispered. She squeezed my hand again. Tighter this time. As if trying to make up for lost years without words. But there was still one question I couldn't ignore. If you knew everything, I said softly, why didn't you take me away? Her eyes lowered. Tears fell. She struggled to speak, but Victor helped gently. Because she was trapped, he said. Legally and physically. He paused. Isabella controlled every document tied to your identity. Leaving would have triggered investigations that would have exposed your mother's condition and invalidated her legal authority over you. I looked at him. That means she couldn't save you without risking everything collapsing too early. Silence filled the room. My mother closed her eyes, exhausted from trying to communicate. But her hand stayed on mine. And for the first time in my life, I understood something I had never considered before. I wasn't abandoned. I was contained. Protected in the worst possible way. Outside the room, distant voices echoed through the estate. Arrests. Investigations. Evidence being collected. Isabella's system was finally breaking apart. But even as everything fell, I realized something else. The truth about my past wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning of what I would have to rebuild. And somewhere outside that room, Isabella was still deciding her final move. The mansion was no longer the same place I grew up in. Within 48 hours, it turned into a controlled investigation site. Police vehicles lined the entrance road. Forensic teams moved through every corridor. Guests were escorted out one by one, their voices replaced by official instructions and sealed evidence bags. The wedding was officially cancelled. But the consequences were only beginning. I stood near the front steps of the estate, watching everything unfold from a distance. I didn't feel like I belonged to that place anymore. Not as a servant. Not as family. Not as anything I had ever been told I was. Victor stood beside me, reviewing documents with legal officers. Nora was coordinating with international investigators who had now confirmed that the Bianchi Family Foundation wasn't just a local fraud case. It was part of a larger network of financial manipulation across multiple countries. And Isabella? She was no longer inside the mansion. She had been taken into custody early that morning after attempting to leave the estate with encrypted drives hidden in her luggage. But what surprised me most wasn't her arrest. It was how calm she looked when they took her away. No panic. No resistance. Just quiet acceptance, like she had already prepared for this outcome long before it arrived. Now everything was being dismantled. Account by account. Record by record. Name by name. For the first time in decades, the financial structure she built was being exposed in full daylight. Later that afternoon, Nora approached me near the garden entrance. "We've confirmed everything," she said. "Your identity was used across hundreds of falsified beneficiary records. But we've already started restoring your legal documents." I nodded slowly. It still didn't feel real. "Does that mean it's over?" I asked. Nora hesitated. "No," she said carefully. "It means the system that trapped you is over. What comes next is rebuilding everything they erased." That word stayed in my mind. Rebuilding. Because I realized something simple but heavy. I didn't actually know who I was outside that system. Not fully. Not legally. Not in any way that mattered beyond survival. That evening, Victor handed me a sealed envelope. "It's from the court," he said. Inside were official documents confirming my identity restoration process had begun. My name, my records, my existence as a legal individual. Everything was being reconstructed from scattered fragments. For the first time, I saw my name printed without fear attached to it. Celine Bianchi. Not a tool. Not a hidden variable. Not an erased identity. Just a person. A few days later, I visited my mother again. Her condition had improved slightly, but she was still weak. When she saw me, she smiled faintly, like she was finally able to breathe without carrying something heavy. I sat beside her and held her hand. "We're free," I said softly. She nodded slowly. Tears formed in her eyes again, but this time they were different. Relief. Not regret. She touched my face gently. And I understood everything she couldn't say anymore. Not all freedom comes in the moment you escape something. Some of it arrives when the truth finally stops hiding. Outside the rehabilitation room, sunlight passed through the windows in long, quiet lines. The world beyond the estate was still the same. But for me, it wasn't. Because I wasn't returning to the life I had before. I was starting a new one from nothing. No orders. No silence. No invisible role to play. Just choices. Just time. Just me. As I walked out of the mansion for the last time, I didn't look back. Not because I forgot everything that happened, but because I finally understood I didn't need to live inside it anymore. And somewhere behind me, the place that once defined my entire existence was finally closing its doors for good.